I'm 30, and my family hasn't seen me in 5 years. At my cousin's wedding, my older brother laughed, sipped his wine, and said, "So, you still cleaning toilets for a living?" I just smiled, pulled out my key fob, and said, "Nah, I mostly travel now. My company pays me, even when I sleep." The look on his face was better than any apology. For context, I actually did clean toilets for 3 years. 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. shifts at a co-working space in Austin, while teaching myself Python and JavaScript during breaks. I'd sit in empty conference rooms at 2 a.m. watching Udemy courses on a cracked laptop I bought off Craigslist for $180. My family thought I was wasting my life. My brother, 7 years older, made sure everyone knew. At every holiday dinner, he'd introduce me as the entrepreneur with air quotes and this condescending laugh. Then he'd talk about his tech job in the city, his stock options, his company car. The breaking point was when I asked to borrow $800 for an emergency root canal. I was in actual pain. Couldn't eat solid food for a week. My brother looked at me across his granite kitchen island and said, "Maybe if you got a real job, you wouldn't need handouts." My mom just nodded like he was speaking truth. I left that dinner and blocked everyone's number. Didn't go home for Christmas. Didn't call on birthdays. Just disappeared. And honestly, it felt good. I kept working, kept learning, started building a scheduling app for cleaning companies because I understood the industry better than anyone. I knew which features actually mattered to people who worked 12-hour shifts and dealt with last-minute cancellations. First year, I made $600 total. Second year, $8,000. Third year, $47,000. Then a hospitality software company in Seattle reached out. They wanted to license my platform for their hotel cleaning operations. The offer was $340,000 upfront, plus 3% of their revenue for 2 years. I quit my janitorial job the same day. By year 5, I had 12 corporate clients, a remote team of 4 developers, and enough passive income that I only worked about 15 hours a week. I bought a Tesla, not to flex, just because I finally could. My brother didn't know any of this. Nobody in my family did. So when my cousin invited me to her wedding, I almost said no. But my cousin was different. She used to sneak me leftover lasagna when I'd show up to family dinners hungry. She never judged. I flew in from Denver the morning of the ceremony. Didn't tell anyone I was coming. The venue was this massive estate outside Austin. String lights everywhere. Open bar. The kind of wedding that costs more than make in a year. I wore a simple navy suit and sat in the back during the ceremony. Tried to stay invisible. My brother spotted me during cocktail hour. He was wearing a designer blazer, holding a glass of red wine like he was in a stock photo. Walked right up with that same smug grin I remembered. "Holy shit, you actually showed up." I nodded, kept it neutral. He looked me up and down. "So what are you up to these days?" He lowered his voice and leaned in. "Still cleaning toilets for a living?" 3 people at the nearby table heard him. One of them laughed. I didn't flinch. Just reached into my pocket and pressed the unlock button on my key fob. In the parking lot, my Tesla Model S chirped twice. Headlights flashed. My brother's smile faltered. "What do you drive these days?" I asked casually. He cleared his throat. Accord. Leased. Makes sense for tax purposes." "Nice," I said. "Leasing's smart when you're still building." His jaw tightened, but he tried to recover. Started asking what I do now. I kept it vague. Said I do software consulting. Some contract work. He looked relieved, like consulting meant I was still barely scraping by. Then dinner started. During dessert, my cousin stood up to thank everyone for coming. She mentioned that her honeymoon to Bali was a gift from the most generous, thoughtful cousin anyone could ask for. She pointed at me. My brother's head snapped in my direction. "He covered the entire trip," my cousin continued. "Flights, resort, everything. 2 weeks at the Four Seasons." We literally cried when we opened the envelope. $15,000. I'd sent it a month ago with a note that said she deserved it. My brother's face went completely white. After dinner, he cornered me by the bar. Tried to act casual, but his voice was tight. "So, how'd you afford that?" I sipped my drink. "Same way I afford most things now. Passive income." "From what?" "That app I built. The one you said was a waste of time 5 years ago." He blinked. "You're still doing that?" "Not really. Sold it last year. Now I just collect quarterly checks." Silence. Then he asked the question I knew was coming. "How much?" I smiled. Enough that I stopped checking my account in 2022. He just stared. You could see his brain recalculating everything. I didn't rub it in. Didn't need to. Because watching him realize he'd been wrong about me for 5 years, that he'd mocked the same work that made me successful, that I'd built everything he said I'd never have, that was enough. I finished my drink, shook his hand, and walked back to my table. My cousin hugged me on my way out, whispered thank you in my ear. My brother never said another word